Welcome back to Human Powered. I'm Jen Rubin. I'm a co-host along with Jessica Becker of the podcast. And today I'm super excited that we get the chance to talk with Danielle Hairston Green. Hey, Danny, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
So I'm really excited to have a chance to talk to you officially or formally, on a podcast, Danielle. I know you because you're on the board. You're on the Wisconsin Humanities Board. But I've known you for a while because you and my husband were colleagues at Cooperative Extension at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he connected us to sort of bring you into the storytelling work I'm doing. So I feel like I know you on all these fronts. And
Yeah.
I'm just excited to talk to you about, first to tell us what is Extension, how does humanities works matter for Extension, what are your projects, why did you want to bring your skill set to the humanities board? So that's about 10 questions in one, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm so glad you're here.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I guess for just a soft introduction, I'm a proud mom, proud grandmom. I'm a really cool friend. I'm also an advocate, a community advocate. I've been doing this work since really I was about 16 years old. I'm originally from Philadelphia, so I got my early start there and like doing work to help support families and children. And so I've landed in Texas and started doing work with the Prairie View A&M University and Texas A&M with Extension. It was my first exposure to Extension and blew my mind of all the work that comes into being a part of Extension. And so for the listeners who don't know too much about Extension, Extension is part of a land grant institution, which is what UW-Madison is, and it's a part of this connection of universities across the U.S. We are represented in every state in the United States. We're considered the largest body of community educators in the country. So I always tell people that this is the absolute best place to work if you want to connect community with advocacy and academia and research. This is a place that you can get all of those pieces in one. And so I started working at UW Madison Division of Extension in, I want to say August 2018. So I can't believe I've been there for 7 years. And I'm the assistant dean and director for human development and relationships. And so my institute is responsible for doing and providing services in 35 counties across the state as it relates to parenting and co-parenting education. We do work in the jails, helping families stay connected to their children through literacy. We do programming for families that are aging and their caregivers, and also programming around financial education. So we do a lot of stuff in my institute, but there's 6 institutes, total in the UW Division of Extension. So you name it, we probably can teach it and support you on it. And you can always, kind of visit our website for more information. But that's a little bit about me. I mean, outside of the fact that I do some co-hosting with the Moth in Madison. And I love that. I get to do that at least 6 times a year.
One thing, just to go back to Extension for a second, and I don't know, the two of you probably have this in your head better than I do, but one of the things that when I first learned about Extension, I was just like, it's such a great model. It's like this idea, right, that like you have these universities, every state has like a major university, and then you extend into the community. And so I
Mhm.
think, like there isn't a community, small, large, in between, that doesn't have these very talented extension agents, like making a huge difference in the lives of the community. And I think, doesn't that go back to the Wisconsin idea? Isn't that where it came from? Does anyone know?
Yeah, like this, we are the Wisconsin idea. If you have an opportunity to read what the Wisconsin idea is, you'll see this beautiful intersection with the work that we've been doing for over 100 years. And so the work that you see us, doing in the community kind of predates a lot of other smaller organizations or even medium-sized to large organizations that does work in their community. And what makes us so unique is that we are attached to universities across the US, where if we land on collaborations in our counties or in our cities and in these small spaces, chances are your tentacles will stretch beyond this state. And so while we might be collaborating in Dane County, there's a chance that your connection will land you in Hawaii, with some other extension educators, or in Seattle, or down in Florida or Maryland. And so it is a wonderful representation, and it is part of the heartbeat of the Wisconsin idea. So when people ask about extension, sometimes they think Wisconsin is like the unique, like the place that only extension lives. And then they find out through having these conversations that no, in fact, we're everywhere. We also have sister extension organizations that are a part of historically Black colleges and universities. So there's about 19 of them. Prairie View A&M University is one of them, and that's where I came from doing my initial work in extension. But yeah, when you look at the Wisconsin idea, it's definitely inspired by the work that we do in our communities, and our educators are embedded in their communities.
I just have to say that I've lived in Wisconsin for more than half of my life now, and you've explained Wisconsin Extension and the Wisconsin idea better than I've probably heard explained. And I've been in conversations recently where there's been this sort of questioning around the relevancy of the Wisconsin idea today. And I
Mhm.
think that in part is kind of in this sort of sense that things are crumbling, that, systems aren't working for us, that institutions maybe don't understand the reality on the ground, or that, there, along with that, concern about the university systems is the Wisconsin idea even anything today? Do people know what that is? And so
Mhm.
I really appreciate the kind of energy that you have in explaining it. And it, for me, also makes me proud again of that Wisconsin idea. But it isn't necessarily, yeah, I would say it's really not understood that this is something beyond Wisconsin.
I'm always surprised when I talk to folks about extension, and I tell them about, well, yeah, and 4-H is in our, and they're, oh, well, we know 4-H. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, let's keep going. And so many individuals across the US may recognize 4-H, but they don't see the connection at all, because sometimes it's kind of presented as this singular entity, and not necessarily attached to a university. So I get really excited when I have, space and time to talk to people about the work that we do, and the benefit of being able to do it in extension, especially individuals who are like myself, who loves research. I love connecting to scholars, but I also like community advocacy work. And so, how can I get all of that in one place? And extension is that place that I can do that. I can, tap into our researchers on campus with their scholarship and the researchers are doing to inform the curriculums that we design, and implement those curriculum programs out in the community, collect information from the community that then the researchers use to inform the students in the classroom. So it's just like this beautiful trifecta that just keeps going and going and going. So yeah, I love it. I mean, I can. How long do we have for the podcast? Because we can keep going.
It also reminds me of, you're also on the board of Wisconsin Humanities. And one of the things that for my, one of the reasons that I stuck around at Wisconsin Humanities so long, I think, is because I really loved that it brought Wisconsin into this national network, right? Wisconsin Humanities is one organization that is grounded in place, but connected with those offices in all of the states and territories around the country. And so, I hear that energy in your voice, and that was kind of I love that about the humanities councils that are funded through the National Endowment for the Humanities too. So it's
Yeah.
great that
Yeah.
you're part of the board now.
Yes. Thank
Well,
you.
well, and I think, like a similarity, I guess, between Wisconsin Humanities, which is younger than Extension, but it's these, public institutions that are national but are local. And, and we want to do what we can to make sure they still exist, that they're still here on the other end of what's, of our politics. And I think a couple years ago, was it just a couple years ago, Danny? We were like, let's do some workshops with extension agents, because I think Danny in particular is like, people don't know how to tell the story of their work. I mean, in addition to whatever disinformation or misinformation is being put out there, it's also just lack of sharing these stories, because I think people don't necessarily realize, oh, actually, these are public employees that are doing these things that we value in our community, and people just don't know. And so, not that storytelling is a be all end all, by any means, but to help people doing this work figure out how to tell their work. We were all hot about that for a little while, Danny.
Yeah. But what was interesting though, Janet, you brought it up, is that, the thing that got me fired up about doing storytelling, while I didn't realize I've always been doing it, I talk crazy with my friends all the time. We tell stories, we sensationalize the stories, we add things and flowers to the story. I mean, we do the things, right? And I grew up with storytelling, but I didn't really think about it as an art. I was just, it was conversation. It was,
Mhm.
family reunion stuff. And so when I met Jen and her husband, and, I'm sitting at the table and I'm talking to her husband about like how I made it to, Texas from Philadelphia. It was just a general conversation. I'm eating my lunch and he looks at me, he was like, "You need to tell that the moth." And I'm like, "What is the moth? Like, what are you talking about?" Like, no, this is good. This is good right here at lunch. And so after getting exposed to the moth, I did reach out to Jan and at the time another co-host, and said, "You know what? We are being slammed, across the country, all of the extensions, about how fantastic the work is that we're doing, but how sucky we were at telling the story." And so that became the theme of our conference a couple years ago, like really telling the story. And so we did like a multi-series session with our staff. And the goal was to bring them to the moth and give them an opportunity to take the stand, to take the stage. And so we got there and we were like super excited. I was excited. I was like, "Yes, you have your opportunity now. Like, put your name in the basket." And everyone, I think it was like 15, they looked at me. It was like, "I won't do that. Nope. No, I'm not getting that stage." And so I put my name in the basket because I was like, "Look, I can do it. It's easy. Just put your name." But I never thought that they were going to call me. I just was like, at least I showed them I'm brave. I can do. And that was the very first time I took the stage because my name was called. And I was like, "No, not today. Not today." But it was great. And it was my first exposure of doing that, first time, hitting that stage and sharing that, with my colleagues. And they were super excited and screaming from the seats, and I ended up winning that night. And that was kind of history, after that. Just I've been tethered to Jen's hip, ever since. But now my colleagues are super excited about telling their story and coming to these workshops anytime that they can, or even attending the moth to try to, polish up their skills.
That's
Yeah.
pretty inspiring, I gotta say. I feel like the experience you just described is kind of maybe most people in the audience, right? Oh, we're here to listen. We're here to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Although,
It
Yes.
seems like once people get on stage once, they just keep going back, right?
well, I will say, yeah, so I think that's true. And, not to turn this episode into like, a motivational talk for people telling the stories, but I will say when I first told the story, it was like my midlife crisis. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm not charismatic like Danny. I listen to stories. I diagrammed each story till I can like scientifically decide why I like the story. And then I got up and told the story and, it was super fun.
And it really has helped me, number one, shake my nerves, of this whole anxiety that I get around telling my story, because much of my story is kind of embedded in my memories of my parents who have both passed. And so that was hard. And I remember Jen was like, just tell it from your scars, not your wounds." And I'm like, "Okay, all right, let me just tell it from the scar." And that's really helped me not only tell the story of my life, but also helped me to polish up how I tell the story of the work that we do in our organization.
Yeah, I know you're one of the projects you're doing for Extension right now is I think it's the second annual fatherhood conference. And I
Yeah.
think you're very much trying to use some of these tools of research and storytelling and history to create a space for fathers to become better fathers. So I don't know. I'm sure you have a different way that you describe it than that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I definitely want to talk about that. This is definitely our second year that we're doing it. And this was part of my priorities when I came here, for my interview back in 2018. One of the things that I needed to do is kind of share with them some things that I know about the states. in my preparation, I was actually trying to reach out to city council people. I was like, okay, let me see if these city council people in this state will call me back. And so I just grabbed the phone and started calling people. And, a couple did respond and was kind of telling me what they thought was a huge issue, across Wisconsin. And so I thought about that and I helped use that to help frame my conversation. But I knew that based on everything that I heard and, my own personal experience as a paternal grandmother and watching some of the challenges that my sons have gone through with custody of their children and just be struggling with being heard, in the system. And it doesn't just impact the father, impacting the entire family. And so, because of that lived experience, one of my priorities was that I wanted to lift up fathers more. I wanted them to be more visible in the work that we were doing. I wanted us to market better to our fathers. I wanted, when you went onto the website, fathers felt welcome. And so that was my pledge. And so, within about a year of me coming here, we started doing a needs assessment across the state, doing some focus groups, asking dads and practitioners and providers, like, what is it that you need? What's missing? What are you excited about when it comes down to fatherhood, and how could we do better? And once we published that back in 2023, we gathered, some scholars across the campus to distribute, the findings and really brainstorm, like, what's next? What could possibly be next? And the Fathers in Focus conference was the next. And we were responding to the dads and we answered that. And it was fantastic. It was a fantastic experience. I mean, when I say it was great, and we had about 265 registrants that attended. And so that just inspired us and fired us up to come and do this again. Getting the community and just people in general to understand dads are there. They are showing up, right? And we want to shift the narrative of what you'll hear, in the streets or in the news that, there are absentee fathers. Fathers aren't in the home. And just because they're not in the home doesn't mean that they're absent from their children's life. And we wanted to have a representation of that. Like, here they are. They are here. And, they're ready to go. And sometimes it's the systems that needs to be deconstructed and reconstructed so that they can have space. And that's what we're doing as advocates, like finding a way to make space for dads' voices to be heard and, helping them be stronger advocates for themselves so that they can be a part of the deconstruction and reconstruction of the system.
I can think of some dads that I'm going to tell about this. Yeah.
Please do.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad you got to tell us about that.
Yeah.
That's a big project. You maybe know about the program Mother Read, Father Read. In Wisconsin, it was mostly done in prisons, actually. But yeah, Mother Read, Father Read is the name of the program. And
I love that. I would
yeah.
love to connect with those who's still facilitating that, because we do one of our projects is called Literacy Link, and we go into the jails and prison and we do reading, making reading memories as a way to keep families connected to their children. And we do it for the most part, the parents those who are incarcerated get to read their book and have it recorded. And then we share the recording with the child that's home and give them a copy of the book. When they come to visit the parent, they can get a book out the vending machine. They get a coin and get a book out of the vending machine. And we also is instrumental with changing the presence or the energy that's in those waiting rooms, because there are some jails and it's some policies in some jails and prisons that really do not like children coming to visit. And part of it is because of the field of the space is very institutionalized, and so they felt like it wasn't a good place for children to be. And so our colleagues had went to many of the jails and prisons and actually painted the space and made it more visually appealing, and put books in the space, and created like activity sheets under plexiglass on the table so that the kids can use white markers, and we can wipe it off and play tic-tac-toe and things like that. So we really wanted to change that energy, and as a result, some of these spaces have changed their policy around allowing children, to come into those spaces. So, yeah, I would love to collaborate, with these individuals.
Yeah, so I started at Wisconsin Humanities in 2001, and I would say it was probably done between like 2002 and 5. But again, that's a program that was initially designed by one of the state humanities councils, and I think still happens in some of them. When we were cleaning out the offices, we had to sort of deacquisition all of these amazing children's books that
Mhm.
were still in our office from that program. And yeah, the idea, of course, as you're describing, it was just ways for parents and children to be together, to build new memories, to have conversations. So using some of these books that got into, yeah, that opened up conversations for parents to have with their kids.
Love that.
So, so Danny, I know you've been on the board for a couple of years now. I know you got involved with the Constant Humanities initially through the storytelling work that we do in prisons with Odyssey Beyond Bars. But like during this period of time you've been on the board, the organization like went dormant and now has come out of dormancy. So I guess just a little bit about like what drew you to being on this board and how does it feel to be on the board now in this moment?
I had my first interaction with the board. I want to say over a little over a year ago. It was a dinner. I think it was like a board meeting when you guys all came together, and I got to sit at the table with some fantastic people, and they were just kind of talking about the humanities, and I'm telling them about the work that I'm doing in with extension that I have been doing, that I'm planning on doing, and it fired folks up.
I think it always feels reassuring and hopeful and just good to know that there's so many groups doing this work, even if you, I mean, that's just the nature of the world we live in, right? You haven't heard of everything. And so when you
Mhm.
do hear about this other group, you're like, wow, okay, that makes me feel great about my state or, just that people are putting in that effort and making those connections is always kind of, yeah, it's inspiring, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's so many of us that like dig in locally and really do impactful work and there's so much noise that we don't know about it, right? And so it's easy to feel like no one's doing anything and people are doing lots of things. It's just, what gets the traction and
Yeah,
so the more we all know what everyone's doing, the more we can build together.
right. Absolutely. And I
I,
think this is an opportunity also. Like I'm like grateful to be on this podcast. It is another opportunity to just remind folks about extension and the work that we're doing. Remind them that, we are here and we're strong and we are, represented in every single county in this state. So there's not a county that they can be in that they can't find an extension educator. Rather, it is for community and economic development or natural resources or agriculture or 4-H and positive youth development or health and well-being and human development. Like we're everywhere. So if you're looking for a collaboration or partnership, look no further. Just go on down the street. We're there. Let us know. We're ready.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One thing as we're getting to the end of this conversation, Danny, I just want to say that I know you referenced earlier that you got up on a stage, you told a story, you did well, so you advanced to the Grand Slam. And so I hear a lot of people tell really great stories, and this the story Danny told at the Grand Slam, and she won that night, was just this very impactful, very entertaining, but very impactful story about her and her mom. And I know, Danny, you take very seriously, sort of trying to pass on the lessons, that your mom passed on. And so I think in the is it the liner notes? What do we call it? I think when we put out the episode, in the digital notes. What are they
Show
called?
notes.
Thank
Show
you. The
notes.
show notes. Okay, liner notes was like 1980s album, I guess. But anyway, we'll put a link to the story. Is that okay, Danny? If we put a link
Oh
to the
yeah,
story?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
It's
yeah.
such a fun story.
It's such a fun story. So it's you're so busy having fun listening to it, you realize later, oh, it's actually a really important lesson too. And we, many of us have things we've learned from our parents or our mentors that we just wish everyone could know. So this is Danny telling you what she wants you to know that her mother told her. So yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that.
yeah.
I found it. I just listened to it recently, and I found it kind of that push, as we were saying earlier, like I'm not someone who feels like they would ever get on the stage. But what I hear through that story is to know that your mother has passed away, that that's a way of carrying on her legacy and that you are in some ways doing it for her, right? I learned it, Mom, and I'm carrying it on.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of inspiration that I think helps someone like myself understand why one would tell a story publicly, performatively, in front of a crowd. So I got the message. I felt the inspiration, and it sparked something in me. Like,
Yes.
oh yeah, that's how you honor your parents or whoever, whatever it is that changed you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, and she said, my mom, she was always right. My mom was always right. I just didn't like the way she said it. I didn't like the way she, and
I
I was
did,
thinking
yeah.
to
I didn't
I was
appreciate the tone, you know.
right, didn't appreciate the tone, but dang it, she was right, and that's kind of how I felt, with my mom, that situation with my mom. And so I just want to let people know, like, that there's a human connection with storytelling, and most folks in the audience can relate. They're like, ooh, that same thing happened to me, or something similar, or resonates, with me. And that's why, we always talk, especially when Jen and I are doing co-facilitation of storytelling, is, reminding folks that, storytelling is the kind of greatest community currency that we can have, and a beautiful way to connect with people, and, you know, break through any biases, because we're like all one kind of body experiencing these tales together. And, without, whatever biases you may have had when you walked into that space, you just become, connected to people through their stories. And so that really gets me excited.
Well,
I now I suddenly have a million things to say, but one of the things that reminds me of that I feel like when we talk about storytelling, because we end up talking about storytelling here on this podcast a bit, of course, is that you're centering the storyteller, but the it's the listener, it's the skills for the listener too. What I'm trying to say here is that we all could be better listeners. And so one
Mm,
of the gifts of having a storyteller be willing to get up on the stage is that the rest of us get to practice listening and be
okay.
moved by that experience. And that makes us all better people, I think, to slow down and listen.
Absolutely. I love that.
well, Danny, thanks for, joining us at 2 p.m. on a Friday before Labor Day weekend. So I think we all have permission to shut off our computers now.
Yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you for the invitation. I always look forward to connecting with like-minded and like energied individuals. And hopefully you extend the invitation for me to come back soon.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you. Great to get to know you a little better, Danny.
You too. Thank you.
Well, if anything comes from that conversation, I hope more people will get to hear Danny's story that you share in your workshops, Jen, the story that she tells about her experience moving back home and the lessons she's carrying on from her mother. We'll put a link to that, as you said. We'll put a link to that in the notes, and it's a great story.
Yeah, I've now heard this story probably like 20 times because I share it a lot in workshops. I enjoy it every time. And I think that the thing that I really just value about Danny and why I'm glad she's on the Wisconsin Humanities Board is, she's a phenomenal sort of instinctive storyteller, but she really ties it to the work she does, whether it's his fatherhood work or even more so with her extension work. So yeah,
It's the humanities in action, and we get to better understand why these tools and techniques, these things we're always sort of referencing as the bounty offered through the humanities,
yeah.
how it plays out and how people are using it and how it can impact beyond, yeah, sort of beyond the world of the quote unquote humanities and why it's useful.
Yeah. So, well, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Thanks for listening. And thanks to Chrissy for editing our audio, and we'll see you next time.